my friend Professor Hardy. It's my pleasure to be invited to speak to you today. And I was here 13 or 14 years ago discussing a joint study program, but the program didn't succeed because of international law. Different countries have different, legal systems. But it's nice for me to come back again and to visit a nice city, very quiet, like my city in Aalborg. I hope that Professor Carlos has introduced me correctly. I didn't understand, but I hope everything. As my research is major on a very macro level. In the last 10 years, I've been doing research on the rise of China impact on global system, international order, and I have also edited quite a number of books. And now we are waiting for this book. Javier and I, we're editing this China-US rivalry and regional reordering in Latin America. But here's Latin America, we can talk about everywhere. Asia, Africa, I have also done Africa, and the BRICS. Okay, so very macro level. So my presentation today will start from a macro picture about the global order transformation. Then I go to focus on US-China competition rivalry. Then go to China-EU complexity. Then I raise some interesting questions for us to discuss, okay, about the world order changes.
I can do it for you. That's all. Yep.
Okay, so if we talk about world order transformations, then the first we have to understand the US-China rivalry is the key axis for every transformation today, okay? If we talk about Ukraine war today, we have Russia, EU, and Ukraine have a war, but actually behind the war, actually is the US-China rivalry. Because if without US-China rivalry, the world would look like differently, okay? You understand what I mean, okay? Because when the Western media, when they talk about the war, they say they are talking about US and Russia, they were fighting, but behind it, it's China. You can see China is watching our okay. And the way that China choose this position, China in today's it's very awkward position. Okay, China didn't support the invasion, but at the same time, China sympathized Russia's security concern about the NATO enlargement. You can see here that behind Zelensky is the US, behind Putin is Xi Jinping. The West media begin to speculating, and now Russia got out of the SWIFT, but Russia is relying on the Chinese payment system, and China is also thinking about further developing digital currency to that direction. So China is going to fully prepare. Yeah, if you can. Now I want to give you what we call the Brzezinski's reward. In 1997, Brzezinski, the former U.S. national security advisor, he published a book called The Grand Chessboard. Okay, very well known at that time, 1997, and he gave the West a warning. He said that the worst scenario for the West, that is that a kind of alliance between Russia, China, and Iran. Okay, and then he said this time, if they got into alliance, most likely China will be the head, will be the leader, Russia will be the follower, and Iran will be part of the game as well. And that is a disaster for the West. And this warning is actually showing it's some kind of truth today. Okay, this is very interesting. You can see, and Xi Jinping and Putin has a very close relation, even personal relation. China-Russia has joined statement. Now China can buy cheap resources from Russia, even joint Arctic, oil exploration, regular military exercise. China-Russian trade increased, and all this happening, which defines the West assumption. They do not believe China-Russia will get along because of historical reasons. Okay, and don't forget, Iran is applying for being a member of Shanghai Organization, which is also kind of security alliance, but not compared with NATO, but it's a kind of regional security alliance. Thank you. And the world today is very divided. Okay, I don't know whether Portugal is well informed, but in Denmark they do not very much give a good picture about everything. If you look at the condemnation of the United Nations voting, yes, 141 countries condemn Russia. Okay, but the problem we have to ask is why only 46 countries sanctioned against Russia? Why? How about the other 150 countries? They didn't want to sanction Russia. And if you look at the newest report from Cambridge University, from the Center for the Future Democracy, okay, this is the newest data, shows that public survey data, okay, from 137 countries. Okay, among this data analysis, 1.2 billion population in the north, which means that the Western democracies or these northern countries, 75% of the public opinion had very negative view over China, and more than 87% over Russia because of the war. We all know this. However, the data completely reverse. That's among 6.3 billion. That's a lot. The data is opposite. The majority of the developing countries' population, they have over 70%. They have a very positive attitude toward China. Even 66% towards Russia. And this is very confusing towards the Western democracy. How can that be? Okay, so world is very divided, and that's why Indian foreign minister, he said in a debate, he said Europe has grown out of the mindset that its problems are the world problems. Well, I came here earlier, even before the end of the Cold War. I witnessed the transitions. Okay, at that time, when the Cold War was over, the West has its confidence reached to the highest. Okay, we are the rule maker. Okay, everybody should follow our rules. But now it's quite. I can see now the confidence of Europe is declining. I don't know whether Portugal still has a very strong, but the European Union, I can see many of countries decline. And for example, India is a member of Quad, okay, security, which is a little bit anti-China, but at the same time, China is India's large trading partner. India is also part of the BRICS and Shanghai Organization. India has a traditional strong relation with Russia, and India is a non-alliance movement, which is called tradition. So don't expect India to join the Western sanctions against Russia. I don't think so. Even against China, no. India is very clever, it knows its interest. Now, I'll give you some pictures about China's economic development. These are, I don't need to read them more, but these are economic growth, foreign currency, trade, tourism, market, supply chains, and Chinese yuan. Okay, these are all China. When I came to Europe, China was not mentioned at all. And today, China was mentioned every day on the newspaper. And here, if we talk about PPP, then China is the largest economy in the world. If we use nominal, then China is the second. It's about 80% of the US economy. That's why US is very worried. No country has ever reached to 65%. Japan reached to 65% and was killed, okay, in 1970s, 80s. Okay. But China now is about 80. That's why China and US and they are fighting all the time. Thank you. So, in order to understand China's growth, we have to understand Chinese model. What is the Chinese model? We all talk about made in China. Okay, this is the Chinese model. Chinese model means that it has machinery from Taiwan or technology, Japan, Taiwan. It's commodities from the developing country, okay, Middle East, including Latin Africa. Credit from Hong Kong and Singapore because these are Chinese national or Chinese ethnic groups, dominant regions. Then these three factors produced in China and sold to Europe, sold to the United States, and sold to the rest of the world. So China is moving from a light industry producer to the heavy industry, to the electronic, and then to the high tech, gradually move. This is the Chinese made in China model, and China consumes huge global resources. If you talk about cement, China almost consumes 60% of cement. Remember, 60% of global cement being produced and consumed in China. Not produced in China, but produced everywhere, but consumed in China. Washington Post reported that China, in 3 years, 2011, 12, 13, 3 years, China used cement. The amount of cement used in China is equivalent to the US consumption of cement for the whole 20th century. 100 years. China used 3 years, equivalent to US 100 years. And this model also created two consequences. One is deindustrialization in the north and deindustrialization in the south. Okay, in the north means that the northern countries, United States, Europe, basically outsource to China. For the global south, they just sell their raw material to China. Okay, and this has a lot of debate, colonization or new imperialism, all this connected here. And then here, China US trade war. China-US trade wars here. Okay. So we have to understand how China-US come to this situation today, rivalry situation. Okay. China produce everything. As I said, China is the global producer. Produce everything, ship to China, ship to the United States. United States paid dollar, and China has a lot of dollar. Then China used the dollar to buy US debt. And when you buy US debt, the US has a lot of money reserved, then can have a more demand on Chinese products, and China produce more and sell to the United States again and gain payment of the dollar and use dollar to buy US debt again. So this is the one round, second round for 20 years. This is 20 years or 25 years. Okay, here China buy more debt, increase China's exports, US consumption. Okay. So the consequence is that the US is almost empty in its manufacturing capacity. No manufacturing left anymore. But now US moved to financialization. US now moved to financialization. So US today is a financial economy. Production or manufacturing almost no. And China become a productive or manufacturing economy. And this is exactly when Trump come to power, he realized that problem. And he wanted to have a trade war and get the manufacturing back to the United States, but it's very difficult. So what Trump wants to do is that to raise the tariff. He hopes that if tariff is raised, then Chinese product become very expensive. Then definitely then China is going to gradually decrease its export and gradually, economic will be harmed. But his calculation didn't meet the expectation. You know why? Because the problem of the United States, it does not have industry anymore. If you do not import from China, where do you import? If you do not import, where? And especially a large amount order, only China can meet the requirement. For example, the British Queen died 2 months ago. Okay, suddenly Great Britain needs several million of flags, national flags. Okay, where they send the order? EU, the Chinese, Zhejiang province. EU in Zhejiang province, because only China can produce such a big amount within 3 days. They only give it 3 days. Only China has capacity. Okay, can produce the masks also in millions or billions. Okay. And you can see that the result of 20 deficit is increased during the Trump. Okay, and during the Biden is also increased. Deficit increasing. There is no way. Okay, and China is still, even though China ranks 3, but it's very small difference. Okay, Mexico, Canada, and then China. So United States needs China, cannot avoid China. And China is a large trading nation for 128 countries. And today the number is even much more. Okay, which means that the picture is reversed. Before 2000, the United States was the number 1 trading partner for more than 100 countries. Today it's reversed. Today, China is the top trading partner for 128 countries, including US allies. those allies which they want to fight against China. But even alliance, all the aligned countries, their top trading partner is China. Okay, this is 80, and this is the 18. You can see the difference. Okay, in East Asia, ASEAN is China's top trading partner. Okay, in Africa, China is top. In Latin America, it's too also increased, and I will explain that. And China is EU's largest trading partner. Other indicators, for example, for Fortune 500, you all know that Fortune 500, the largest leading multinational companies, okay, Fortune 500. Since 2020, even before China, the number of Chinese multinational companies is number one on the list. Okay, you can see 1995, China only had five companies in the list. And gradually increase, even surpass the United States. Okay. Largest 10 global banks, the first 4 Chinese banks, but they are state banks, they are not private banks. Okay. The largest ports in the world, largest ports, about 10 ports or 15 ports, China occupies 7. Okay. And if you look at the existing brand, the United States occupy more. Okay, iPhone, Amazon, Google. Okay, but for emerging brands in the future, China, these are data from US, not from me. Okay, so they are beginning to calculate companies' development trend. Okay, so the new brand will be China centered. But US still occupy the strategic position of being a global power in finance. Dollar is still the key currency in international trade, and US is dominant power in the SWIFT system. I hope you all understand SWIFT system. Okay? And more than 40% of the trade is still settled in dollars. Okay, and for China it's only 3.2%. But during the war, during the Ukraine war, the Chinese share is getting up because many countries were very afraid of that the US use sanctions against any adversary, any enemy, okay? And many countries begin to switch their dollar currency reserve to other currencies, including Chinese currencies, okay? So now China studies the war very carefully, and China is preparing one day if China-US have conflict over Taiwan issue, then China has to really prepare. One of the strategies taking place right now in China is digital currency. In Shenzhen, in Tianjin, in Chengdu, and another city, 4 cities, they are implementing digital currency, okay? Which means there is no paper money at all. And we can imagine what kind of world will be only digital currency. Okay? China-Russia trade is in yuan now, or in ruble. Forget dollar because Russia is out of dollar system anyway. Saudi and China is going to export oil to China in yuan. I guess US will really pissed off. I don't know how US is going to trade Saudi. Maybe they are going to kill the Saudi king. I don't know. Okay, because that the US dominance in oil currency cannot be altered, cannot be changed. US cannot accept that. I don't know what kind of action US will do. But all China neighbors trade is in yuan. If you go to Southeast Asia, yuan is popular. I was in Vietnam in 2019. Dollar, no, but yuan is good because yuan is also almost kind of circulating around the world, around the country. Okay? Southeast Asia, they like yuan much better than dollar because dollar you cannot use it directly, but yuan you can use it directly. And finance, the two. If you look at the China, which country is the largest credit in the world today? Private credit. That's China. China lends so much money, okay? But China, because you lend so much money, then debate about the debt trap. During the lunchtime, we talk about the debt, okay? But this is a very ugly debate because they didn't tell people the true situation. For example, Bangladesh and Sri Lanka debt were on Western City all the time. But this is very ugly because Chinese composition of the debt is only 30%. The other 60% are from Japanese bank, the World Bank, the IMF, and many others. It's not only China, but the Western media somehow they do not tell the whole picture about the debt issue. Okay, and China's new bank, Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, is really playing a big role today. You know why? Because this is the World Bank voting power distribution. This is very unfair. China say, okay, according to PPP, purchase power parity, my economy is the largest in the world. Okay, but my voting power is only this small. United States, according to PPP, purchase power parity, the United States economy is this. But the United States voting power is even larger than its economic share. China said, well, this is not fair. Blinken blamed China for not abiding by global rules of order. China, well, this is not fair. I'm not going to buy this rule. So that's why China established its own bank in order to increase its power of decision-making power. Yeah. And on social issues, the Chinese middle class is increasing dramatically. Okay, you can see here, Chinese middle class, upper middle class, but U.S. middle class from 1970 to 2019 declined about 10%. Okay, you can about 11%. This is this 11%. They are strong supporters of Trump. Okay, strong supporters. So you can see on the social indicators also, the Chinese social is up and the U.S. is in. That's why that power transition theory. I don't know whether you study international relations theory. There is one theory called power transition theory on the realism paradigm, where it shows the existing power and the emerging power. When the power balance is getting to the favor of emerging power, war will start, or conflict will start. But China's development also creating contradictions. Okay, contradictions, which means that China's rise and the capitalist world economy, they have different impact. Okay, today China is challenging most the core. I hope you understand the world system theories categorization of world structure. We have a core country, we have a semi-peripheral country, then we have a large peripheral country. Okay? Core countries, Europe, United States, Australia, Canada, all these countries here. Then semi-peripheral, large developing country, the India, China claims itself to be developing country, but Europe says, no, you are not developing country anymore. So whether China is here or not here, we can debate the Africa, the rest of the world is. So China now is challenging more the core. More and more Chinese population enter the core and making the core very clouded today, okay? Where Chinese are taking the bite of the cake, grows well, take large share, and Europe and the United States is decreasing. That's why the conflict. Semi-peripheral is also shrinking, I don't know. They say that the Chinese population is getting rich and rich, which increase, make China more towards here, but more other countries like Brazil, Argentina, Mexico, they claim that China's rise is making those countries more poor. Because when China getting rich, those countries are becoming peripherized. Okay, this is a debate, or this is also like the debt issue. They try to portray that China's development actually is shrinking the semi-periphery, but for the periphery is good because Africa has more choices. Okay, Africa said to the European Union, if you do not lend me the money, forget it. I can borrow from China. I have more options today. Brazil in 1990, Brazil is ahead of China. Most indicators, but since last decade, Brazil actually became commodity provider to China. So this also makes a lot of debate. Okay, but on the periphery, there are also other debate regarding unequal exchange, regarding neo-colonialism, neo-imperialism, debt trap, all this are connected here. Here is peripherization. And the second but last area for competition between US and China is the value. and political system. Okay. Chinese always ask questions: why India never be even when India is heading up? Why India never be regarded as a threat? Why only China? Okay, so China asking the question. Yeah, that's because the political system and non-diffusion, ideational impact. Okay, this is a very good article if anyone is interested. Okay, China's real threat is to the U.S. ruling ideology. It's not material, it's the ruling ideology. Okay, it says that if China is continued to be successful, even China's rise poses no threat to the United States, but still is a big threat to political establishment. How U.S. justify its own power and its understanding of the U.S. role in the world. So how are you going to justify China's rise to the rest of the world? Because China is an authoritarian state, but still can reach such a high technology level. So how do you see a lot of books about Chinese state capitalism or this? And another article is the clashes of capitalism. State capitalism vis-a-vis private capitalism. Chinese capitalism, American capitalism. These are value. Okay. And this is very interesting. That is that China today is regarded both by Europe and the United States as systemic rival. So we have to understand what is systemic rival. Systemic rival means that China is the only power that is able to challenge you, at the same time make replacements, which means that the find alternative. Russia is also a challenger, but Russia is not able to create alternative. Okay. But if you divide China's development into two parts, from 1980s to 2000s, China mainly exports daily products, light industry products. Never mention China is systemic rival. Never, because I was here. I experienced all development. But since 2010 and now, when China become more and more engaged in high-tech competition, suddenly China become systemic rival. Because high-tech, they call deep products, deep goods, whereas daily commodities are shadow goods. Shadow goods, no value, or what is called the diffusion. But deep goods, deeply intertwined with value. You can see that the computer software, TikTok, Alibaba, Tencent, you name it, Huawei, these are companies produce products which can control people. This is what West is so afraid, that China is going to collect all our data and control us. So this is called high tech. So you can see that the systemic rival is connected with high tech. Okay. And the U.S. national security strategy just published a few months ago. Blinken announced to the whole world, People's Republic of China is the only competitor with both intent to reshape the international order and increasing the economic, diplomatic, military, and technological power to do so. China is the only power. That's why China is systemic rival. Systemic rival is that you have the intention. You also have the material power to realize your intention. Okay. This is the Chinese. The last area for U.S.-China rivalry, that's the military. Okay. Pentagon reports every year threat of China. Okay. Maybe they want to get more money from the Congress. Okay. China-U.S. rivalry in the South China Sea, on the Taiwan issue. These are all U.S. alliance. Okay, you have the NATO. NATO began to talk about China threat. I was very surprised. China is far away from NATO. Okay, but NATO began to talk about China threat. Okay, you have Five Eyes. Okay, Anglo-Saxon Five Eyes. Okay, 5 countries cooperate. You have a Quad. Then you have a bilateral. China, Korea, China, Japan, China, Australia. All surround China. Okay, China is facing a lot of security alliance. Okay, and right now, China-U.S. competition in space station, in satellite, and this is a U.S. prediction that in about 3 years, the Chinese military is this part, and this is the U.S. military in West Pacific. this is a China threat. Okay, China will be overwhelmingly larger than the United States in terms of military and security forces. And this is very much mentioned in today, whether Taiwan will be next Ukraine. Okay, it's every European newspapers, American newspapers talk about Taiwan issue. Okay, Taiwan will be the key issue between United States and China. But Biden this time, he repeats U.S. one China policy. One China policy is kind of global policy. Okay, Portuguese also one China policy. Okay, many countries have one China policy, but they all support Taiwan indirectly. Taiwan was taken as a Japanese colony in 1895 when China was defeated in a war with Japan. Then Japan returned Taiwan back to China in 1945 when Japan surrendered. Okay, but unfortunately, after the Second World War, China was involved in a civil war where the two political parties, when the National Party, Communist Party, National Party had to flee to Taiwan, National and Chinese Communist Party won the power. So Taiwan became the house of the National Party. So China was divided into Taiwan and mainland. Okay. But for a long time, it has always one China policy. No problem. Even United Nations 2758 resolution said that Taiwan was expelled from the United Nations and China entered as a replacement. So there has been always one China policy. But now, the United States finds that Taiwan is a very good tool to make problems to China. Okay, so, but this is a very dangerous game if United States use Taiwan as kind of a way or approach to harm China or to delay China. But this is a very, I think it's very dangerous. But Marshall Fund, German Marshall Fund, had made a new report showing that all NATO countries, all Western democracies, they are support to Taiwan. All 14 countries surveyed, 35% saying that if there are any war or conflict taking place, the best is diplomatic relations, diplomatic solutions, and 32 say we can only use economic sanction. Oh, military, no. Only 2% of Americans and all the 40 countries, they said we should use military to defend Taiwan. So you can see that in the United States, which support Taiwan seriously, only 80% wants to use military means to defend Taiwan. So this is, no, it's fine. Now we begin to move to Europe. Now, Europe, to me, is standing on two boats. The Chinese way with the country is first in a dilemma situation, and Chinese use a proverb called standing on two boats. Okay, which is that you want to take advantage from both sides, you are standing on two boats. It's very unstable. In 2020, in the Munich conference, Munich Security Conference is the highest security conference in the world. Munich Security Conference, the title of the conference is Westlessness. Okay, it's very interesting. Westless. It means that the conference try to discuss why the world become less and less Western-centered. Okay. This is 2020, but 2021 when Biden came back as a U.S. president, the Munich Security Conference they changed the title called the Beyond Westlessness. We are coming back, Biden said, but is that coming back? We don't know. Okay, we don't know. I think that it's too early to say that we are now going beyond Westernlessness. Europe now is actually having a lot of troubles and the war. The war is really unexpected to many European countries. And I read recently a report. This is a very good report. I hope you can read it. Okay. War has returned to Europe. 3 reasons why EU did not see it's coming. there are three major factors. I think it's very good analysis. I appreciate it. First is that since the fall of Berlin Wall in 1989, overconfidence in all law and model. We are the model of regional integration. We are the model of norms, values. We are the model of this, that. Great confidence. Okay. And today, I realize the confidence is gone. Confidence is gone to such an extent that after war starts, no Russian students, no Russian business, no research, no musician, no tourists, everything about Russia and China, every Chinese scholars, including me, is fine. They check also me, okay? But they found out that I'm very clean, okay? Every Chinese, even some Chinese professors, they were punished without even charge. Okay, some of them were released recently. Okay, and also double standard, Western double standard is another factor leading to the world is getting divided. Okay, you are very sympathetic to Ukraine refugees. How about Palestinian refugees? How about Syria refugees? My students wrote a master thesis in Denmark. The Ukraine refugees contrast with Syria refugees. Syria refugees, they were not treated so well, but the Ukrainians treated much better. Okay. The third one is that the EU did not have a lot of reforms. Okay. It's like status quo all the time. So it's very static institution. It's not very follow the trend, follow the reform. Yeah. Yes. But Europe is actually aware of this world order change in the light of China's global rise. But in France, they have a tradition where they call ambassador back for a kind of a conference. Okay, every year or every second year, I don't know. But 2019, President Macron he made a speech to the ambassadors, French ambassadors, who are stationed everywhere in the world. Okay, they call them back and have a conference. And he said that the Western hegemony, which is based on French hegemony in the French European cultural hegemony in the 18th century, the British industrial hegemony in 19th century, American overall hegemony in the 20th century. These three hegemony combined as Western hegemony now is over, or is on the way to be over. This is his word. Okay? His speech also mentioned a lot about China, about the rise of China, India as well, Russia as well. Okay? At that time, there was no war. Okay? Especially Chancellor Merkel, I think she did a very good job in the World Economic Forum Davos, also 2019. She said that the international system is too slow to make necessary changes. And she said that now we have a Asian Investment Bank, we have a Shanghai Organization, we have all these Chinese-led institutions. Why China need to do that? It's because we do not want to reform our system. So actually, Chancellor Merkel also is very clear about the shortcoming of existing system. They do not want to change. The United States does not want to change. That's the problem, and China cannot wait. So if you do not give me more power, I establish my own institution. You can see today China is EU's largest economic partner, and China and the EU had this comprehensive agreement on investment. Very unfortunately, because of the Hong Kong issue, this investment package was delayed, but not cancelled, delayed. European leaders said, we will do it later on. And Chancellor Schulz, he led a delegation visit China 2 weeks ago, okay? And with all German companies, okay? I just checked all these companies, they have, most of them have a market share, or profit share more than 35%. Huge share. They have a huge market. Yesterday, I saw the debate between the CEO of Volkswagen in the German channel. I see the Chinese subtitle. They translated it, and he defended Schulz's decision to visit China. He said, "We depend on China much more than China depend on us. Don't forget, our wealth depends on China today." And he mentioned that in the Volkswagen headquarters in Germany, there are 10,000 laborers which depend on China's business. Okay, and how much tax Volkswagen paid to the German welfare. Don't forget, you mentioned this. And the Dutch company, Esmo, which produce the microchips, is not allowed to sell anything to China by United States, but Dutch said, no, I don't want to follow your order. I want to continue to sell to China because in a couple of years, according to Dutch information, in a number of years, China is going to produce the same machinery. If we do not sell, we lose all markets. China is Europe's largest tourist market. Okay, I believe many Chinese tourists all come to Portugal and ever. Chinese, they just love to travel. And they love to buy things. They buy everything. Sometimes I don't understand, they just buy everything. Everything from Europe is good. China is the largest market and also largest spender. According to my statistics, China is #1 spending on tourism. Okay, the Corona 3 years period really made European tourism market suffer a lot because that China implemented this Corona policy, which is very restrictive. You can go abroad, but once you return to China, you have to be locked 3 weeks in a quarantine center. Nobody wants to do that. Okay. Europe, we are facing two powers competition, but Europe is behind. I don't know whether European population, we understand this. We are behind most high technologies, information technologies, almost are competitions between US and China. Europe has no place. But I talked recently to a colleague of mine who works on the digital, is that Europe has been aware of this. So European Union is going to allocate special budget to tackle this issue. Okay, Europe, we are behind. Most high-tech industry competition are between the United States and China. If you look at leading institutions, research institutions, okay, they are China and the United States. And one Germany, one France, but again, both China, United States, and Japan. If you look at high technology, I just mentioned, if you look at STEM graduates, okay, China #1, India #2, United States, Russia, Europe is behind. If you look at countries leading in the world scientific publication, China, US, okay, China #1, US, and India. Now we have some Germany or France. But otherwise, the whole EU is relatively behind. So we have to be aware that the rest of the world, they are catching up, they are developing. So EU is standing on two boats. The US is standing on two boats. Okay? On one boat, you align with the United States, okay, and you want to develop security, strategic independence. But I doubt the European courage to really say to the United States, we want to develop our own security. But at the same time, Europe has problem with U.S. unilateralism and many U.S. behavior. It's not good. But they want to do business with China, but at the same time, they have a value and non-problem with China. All this, democracy, human rights. So, but they want to do business with China. So there is a report, European Union report, about 18 countries surveyed. All countries said they want to strengthen security aligned with the United States. At the same time, they want to do more business with China. Typical standing on two boats. Okay, so this is not all of Europe situation. East Asia is the same, exactly the same. All Eastern Asian countries, they say they want to keep security aligned with the United States, but economic trade with China. On China issues, is EU unified or has consensus? No. On China, every issue, and apart from the European Parliament, sometimes they make resolutions over they have some kind of consensus. But on real policy, institution like European Union or Commission, on every Chinese issue, they are divided. Okay, on investment issues, on One Belt One issues, on Balkan countries is between Balkan countries and Eastern Europe. They are part of a One Belt One Road. At the same time, they also want to be member of the European Union, so they are also in the Huawei Some country use Huawei, some country not use Huawei. You can see Europe is divided. And human rights issue and democracy, Europe is also very divided. So on average issue regarding China, Europe is divided. Okay. In the United States today, on China is consensus, both Republican and Democratic. China hawkish policy is bad, it's good. So in the United States, there is consensus on China, very much. Okay. And EU dilemma. EU has, especially Germany, they have made research on the consequence if United States and China, if they come into conflict, which side Europe is going to choose? Maybe Europe has to choose the US side. Okay, maybe, okay. But then they begin to calculate, if we stand on the US side, what will be the consequence? The consequence is that a trade war with China for Germany is 6 times as much as Brexit. They calculate how much the Great Britain lost when they left the European Union. And if Germany had a trade war with China outside on the US side, Germany will lose 6 times more than Great Britain's loss. They also have made a conclusion, this foundation, they make also what's called research on in case Europe has to side with the United States on sanctions against China because of Taiwan conflict, and they said it's unlikely to succeed. First, because of China's integration in the world economy. China is China is occupying a great deal of supply chains, and the last they said that the global South country never joined. Okay, you don't have any alliance, especially regarding developing countries. They are not going to side with you. And economists want that now China, you are calculating how to deal with China. China is preparing to isolate itself against Western countries. China is, it knows, because China studied the war, that how Russia is being sanctioned, and China is preparing. Okay? And Forbes is very clever, saying that while Europe and America thinking about decoupling with China, Africa, Latin America, especially East Asia, Southeast Asia, they are more and more integrated with China. All this is the largest free trade agreement in East Asia, Southeast Asia. China's largest partner is ASEAN. Second is Europe. Third is the United States. So ASEAN, which is regional, okay? And in the East Asia, we have a dual system today. We have a American security and Chinese economy. This is the same as Europe. And also we have also other structures in East Asia. Don't forget, one Belt and One Road. Okay, in Europe we have a fixed routes between China and Europe. I think there is one to Madrid, one is to London. Okay, and you can see here. Here is a newly planned highway from China all the way to Bangkok, and they just established a finished project, highway, Laos and China. Okay. And they are going to do more. Because of the war, Russia is now much more open to China's suggestion that the more railways will go through Central Asia, because Russia used to be a little bit cautious about China expansion. But now, since Russia is being sanctioned, so Russia now, okay, I open to China now. So there will be more linkage. Okay, you can see there as well. So One Belt and One Road is really expanding. Are we well informed in Europe? I don't think so. So I try to provide you now some research questions. Okay, that is structural agencies changing. Okay, today we are in the age of global political economy. The difference of global political economy and international political, you know the difference. Okay, in the global political, Gilpin, he wrote another book which in 1980s used as a textbook for universities. It's called International Political Economy. Okay, international political economy, international relations. And today, global political means that the fragmentation and decentralization of complex production chains and the worldwide dispersal and functional integration of different segments in these chains. Okay, this is the structure changing. Okay? Structure become much more kind of intertwined. Labor union, also division of labor, production chain, supply chain, value chain, global finance, resource, raw material, they're all mixed. Agency in international political economy, state is the main unit of analysis, but in global political economy, agency become multiple. States, don't forget transnational companies, don't forget transnational political forces, don't forget transnational civil societies, NGOs. They are all playing a big role. So structure is getting much more complex, intertwined, agency become multiple. So US now trying to, the US-China rivalry is in such a way that the United States knows that China now is occupying more and more structural power in the global. If we put all the Chinese factors into the structure, the US is worried. So United States wants to reorganize global economic structure. For example, the CHIPS Union. United States today is trying to make 4 countries, or if we take Taiwan as a territory, not a country, the United States, Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan wants to, push China away from the microchips industry, but it will fail. You know why? Because China consumes 40% of microchips in the world. Because made in China, China made everything. Everything has the microchips. China is Samsung, South Korea. Samsung is the largest chip market export. Many EU countries are involved, and US own chip industry is losing huge profit today. US stock market is down, the chip market is down, because US wants to punish China, trying to reorganize what economic structure. No, you can't do it because structure has been fundamentally changed. It's imposing constraints on US as agency. Okay, now we come to research question. Is that we are now, after I have presented everything so far, then we can think that today we are witnessing a kind of world order which is seen to be displaying changing characteristics in 3 different but overlapping ways. Okay? World disorder, world new order, world reorder. Disorder means that the emerging power and existing power, they are fighting. Nobody abide by the rule. They don't care the rule. New order is that there is a need for new order, but no country is making the initiative. If you make the initiative, nobody listens. Reorder is the best, is that the existing power is open arm to welcome a new emerging power, so we can collectively modify the existing system, but US refuse. So all these 3 somehow intertwined, overlapping. Now my research question is whether we are moving towards multi-order world. This is a new concept, multi-order world. It is a project which I won a big funding in Denmark. Professor Trainer, she's the key applicant. I'm the co-applicant. Another professor, Helena from University of Kent. We received 5.9 million Danish kroner for this project. The project is anticipating governance in a coming multi-order world. Multi-order world means that it is a premise, it's a conceptual understanding that international system is transforming into one consisting of several international orders, coexistence, which will alter the conditions of global order. Several international orders will coexist as states with similar identity, signifiers such as culture, ideology, geography, religion, history, identity. They will somehow go around, become groupings. So we can see this is our application was received, our funding was received before the war. So at that time we imagined that there is a Chinese-led order, which is the driving force is Belt and Road. American-led liberal order, we assume that Europe is a part of it. Okay? Then we have also Russian-based Euro-Asia economic order. Then Africa, Latin America, Asia, they are moving around this order, try to maximize their gains or their advantages. Okay, this is the last one. Is that now I take Russia out first. Let's see whether EU is able to become an independent political force. We don't know. Okay, I just put it here. EU's position a multiple question mark depending on EU's. Okay, so EU is standing up, and EU wants to also have a strategic independence. EU and China systemic rival question mark. EU and the US alliance also question mark. But there is no question mark is between US and China, which that they are in a conflict rivalry situation. So major power relations towards a multi-order world. So this is my question to everyone. This is my research. I will be occupied by this research for the next 3 years. So thank you for your attention. Thank you for coming.
Okay, thank you very much for your presentation. And now I'll give the floor to Jorge Tavares da Silva.
Okay. Yeah. Well, it's an honor to be here to explain one of the most important things in nowadays, the rivalry mainly between the United States and China. I think we are in the main stage in international politics today, and I have here a lot of interesting topics, the interesting point of view about this rivalry, joining or not joining China and Russia in your graphic. It's in my. I see that in your graphic, the China is also decoupling from Russia in your one of your last graphics. But the main issue in this great topic is the competition between the United States and China, mainly for power and power reasons, mainly for two different visions of the world. I think we have two different perceptions and two different models in terms of international politics. One of them defending the liberal model and different ideals in terms of politics, and the other one is, of course, the other model. If we want to accept that China has a Chinese model, it's a different political system and a different political model, and they are at this moment competing. But it's very important that in the past, and if we look to the past of China, and if we look at the past of United States, in fact, the competition was less important than today. Why? Why that kind of competition changed? Mainly because we have a different leadership in the United States, and of course, China also changed, passing from a level that the competition or international competition was based in trade and business, and now they are changing that kind of trade and business in terms of politics. Because in your presentation, if we look at that, it seems that China don't have a political interest in terms of the world, but in fact, China has political interests. Even the Belt and Road Initiative, it's not only an economic model, it's not only an economic target, it has also political targets. And this is one of the reasons why we have a lot of countries in global south that accepting and defending China point of view in terms of international politics, and in the north, in Europe, there are a lot of countries that are defending the liberal point of view. I think that we now have a fracture, international fracture between these two worlds. The liberal world, it's not the democratic world of the democracies. No, it's more than that. It's a kind of liberal world and a different model, a different political model. And this model from the South is one of the, also in your presentation, present in your presentation, that they partly participate in the traditional order, and at the same time they are creating an alternative order. And this creates conflict with the United States when they build the traditional international order, and now they have a new international order, or an alternative to the traditional order. So they are creating conflict, or we are in conflict at this moment between a traditional order and the proposal of a new order, mainly dominated by China interests and China solutions. So in general, I think this is one of the main arguments or the main ideas about your presentation. But of course, we have, it's only a comment, not a question, but probably we have, I'm going to pass the word for you, and you can ask some questions about I think this idea is, yes. This discussion is open, and we can make some questions about the presentation of the professor.
So follow your comment,
yeah.
that whether the asking we should ask whether we can have the coexistence of two approaches, okay, or two visions. One is liberal, one is non-liberal. Let's call it non-liberal. Or China used to call it a world order with Chinese characteristics. Okay, and China love to use the with Chinese characteristics. Okay, whether we can have this, China said we can. United States, no, we can't. We cannot have a two. Okay, so I think then the problem in the West is that you have this tradition or ideology where norms, values are universalized, whereas China as well, I don't think it's universalized. Okay, but why not? We can accept the existence of the two visions. But that's the conflict. The United States, no, we can't have two. It's only one. That's why the US is pushing every country to choose the side today. And China says, you don't have to choose side. We just do business. And the US is very proud, claiming that the US has a lot of alliance in the world, and China has no alliance. That's true. But China says, I don't need alliance. I have a lot of friends. This is a typical relationality understanding, the logic of relationality. The East Asian, we do business, we have good friends, but it doesn't have to be we are in alliance. So that's why there are a lot of these kind of issues we can have a good discussion. But I just want to follow.
But one of the problems is when we talk about this last governance, the last presidents of Xi Jinping in China, the Chinese foreign policy changed also. And changed particularly in terms of speech. It changed in terms of the way they think that the United States were in a declining moment, and China will be the model of China, the democracy of China will be the best in the world, or better, and probably will be the success of in the future will be the Chinese model. This kind of speech, in terms of international relations, creates conflict with the United States.
If I understand the Chinese foreign policy as from a native point of view, that China always believed that the Chinese success, the Chinese model, is unique to China, never to any other countries. This is what I understand. Carol, you can correct me. From native, it's all the way since I was young, before I came to the West, that I remember an African leader came to China, asked Deng Xiaoping, saying that
low profile.
What kind of experience you can give to us? What kind of successful experience or lessons you can give us? Deng Xiaoping says, no, you cannot learn anything from us. That we are so different. Ours as ours. Okay, you cannot copy our experience. But there is one issue you can learn. That is policy independence. You have to make your own mind. You have to act according to your line of thinking. You never surrender to other powers' pressure. China will go our own way. We never surrender to any big power's threat. Policy independence is very important. Okay, so this only lesson that Deng Xiaoping passed to the one of the African leaders. I can't remember whom. Okay. I know this story very well because this is. So I think, to be honest with you, that China is not a power that wants to export its various norms. That I'm very confident. Even in the future when China, but norm diffusion is, I understand what's your point. I think he's also right that when you do one belt and one road with other countries, and when you lend money, borrow money from China, indirectly, you are also exposed to Chinese way of thinking, way of doing things. So norm diffusion, you cannot stop it. Okay, this is a Pelosi's word in the Munich Conference 2020, Westlessness. Did you remember I mentioned Munich Security Conference? Pelosi said, if you democracies use Huawei technology, your system will be changed. Your democracy will be gone, you will become authoritarian. So I do not know his logic. I do not know his logic, her logic. But one of the Chinese diplomats called Fu Ying, she was there. And she was very upset. And she said, I have a question. She said, if Western democracy, because the Huawei technology can change, then your democracy is too fragile. If you use Huawei product and you change your system, then your system is too fragile. So on that aspect, again, I come back to your point. I think that China is not a power that's be waiting to force other countries to accept its norms and values. I think that's the way the West system is doing. Any questions? This
Question?
yeah. Yeah, please.
Thank you so much for your presentation. I studied Chinese and the languages and business course. So it's an amazing opportunity to be here to listen about China because it's an inspiration for me. I'm from Brazil, that is an emerging country, and it's inspiration to find a Brazilian way to develop our country. I would ask if what do you think about like US is creating creating a party of vision, and you can see Trump just and UN in 2020 when he talked about United States center and its interest. And Xi he talks about integrating other parts of the world and the emerging countries. So it seems to me that China is being kind of passive in this war that Western is trying to trade. And in Brazil, in the elections, you can clearly see the position of some politicians against China. And you can go continue the next year, the goals of this war that we try to create can influence in the China business from so is how China is acting to change the perspective of this country's political
This is a good question.
because how can a country respond to everyone that is saying ideological or I don't know, that is my question.
I'm living in the West, living in Denmark, and you can see a lot of civilizations, a lot of the negative attitudes against China all the time. I sometimes say it. Sometimes I think that she means that say it, express your argument, but you have to understand these two different. Here, to argue, for your discourse, to debate in the TV, to win the audience, the Western way. The Chinese, have you ever heard the Chinese emperor about specific audience? No, never this, or never. And have you heard that our president, Chinese president, they give speeches or even debates with, even receive a lot of interviews. Everything. This is not the political culture of this thing. It's not the Chinese political legitimacy is based on meritocracy, not based on democracy. Democracy, which means the election, debate. have a way. Well, you don't have to use cheatiness. The technology is built on this almost 30 years relationship experience, being a local leader all the way to the city level, to the provincial level, to the minister level, to the vice president, to the president. Okay? 30 years, that's meritocracy. The institution is a meritocracy. Okay. Here, I also have a problem. We are having a democracy system. We elect. It does not necessarily be that you elect the right person. It was elected. Okay, you're criticizing or attacking, he was elected. Okay, so it's a different culture approach. The Chinese approach is that I just do it. I use my example to inspire people. But whether to argue against or argue with, it's not the way. I agree with you that it's maybe a function of me, like scholars and research, we try to win people's mind, to produce new narratives, arguments, discourses. But the leaders, but the foreign ministries, spoken women, they become a bit more, proactive. So they are criticized as wolf diplomacy, wolf diplomacy, because they get to counter argument. And you see, they are not used to, East Asia is very passive. It's not a very kind of, very proactive way. Argue against, win discourse argument is happening. It's quite diplomacy. ASEAN, when Burma was in crisis, always the country was attacking Burma. ASEAN countries know we will send one president to talk with the leader, the second another leader come there, all the tables of negotiations. Okay, this is not the easy way to deal with problem. We are not used to this. It's a different way of international relations of political controversy.
Thank you for your speech. But I think a lot we see here in Western on social media can start to see a lot of I can't say social movements, but a reaction from Chinese people, like against, rather than parts as someone that wants to have their voice heard. And maybe if you don't know if the president is going to be right, we are taking the right of truth. So how do you see this reaction from the Chinese people when the action?
When you say Chinese people, how much representative you're talking about? Okay. Let me give you some Western stuff. I'm very cautious in using data. I always use Western data because I use Chinese people. I love data. Okay. So let's stick to the Western data and very qualitative data. For example, international trust barrier. Okay. This is a very authoritative way of using data to know people's confidence on government, people's confidence to the future. Okay, this is one for international trust barrier. Another is Ipsos, IPSOS from UK. These data are very much also kind of public opinions for people's recognition towards the legitimacy of government. Okay. And also Harvard, Harvard University. I think nobody challenged Harvard University's authority. Okay. So Harvard they produced a report 3 years ago, 2019. They traced China development 30 years in China. And then they published a report. The title is the Communist Party is generally resilient. People support the Communist Party huge. There are some political dissonance. I love this that, I love sharing that. But how much representative is what you call the Chinese people? Okay. Maybe one dissident shouting West media will portray it as kind of general kind of people's reaction. That's not the case. Ipsos and also international trust pyramid for the last 12 years, I can show the data, shows Chinese population is among the top. Okay, recognizing their showing their confidence for the future and their recognition of the legitimacy of the government. China is all the top. You can dismiss this out of the data, but these are Western authority data. So how you will explain this data? If you said that people begin to fight against communist, I think there are some people explanation, but how much represent I don't know. I talk to my parents every day. I talk to my neighbor. There are different dissatisfactions, but on the whole, China development, I think people are satisfied. Especially my mother, she's very happy with the pension system. In the early years, not everybody worried, but now there are three Harvard reports say three factors which Chinese legitimacy is very strong. One is the environment. 15 years ago, I was in Beijing. It's difficult breakfast. Today, if you look in the Beijing's climate, blue sky. Second is the poverty reduction and the social welfare. Also tremendous. Okay. Third is healthcare. Before my mother did not even go to the before my mother did not injection maybe one third of the is not afraid of a big operation. It's not afraid of a big operation because she only maximum pays 20%. 8% state paid. Universal coverage of healthcare. It's tremendous. But okay, Western solving challenges are using economic social. Particularly, I agree. I agree that there are distance every country. There are people. I was in charge of conflicts last week in China. In Emma, the professor from the school mentioned case of resilience. So I agree with whether they represent the mainstream. I have to find out by yourself. I doubt that this is not my impression. And not in line with the Western house. Western data. The main data is also from Aalborg University, from California University, you can find a lot of data. Especially during the Corona period, 3 years. Okay, because people think who has a lot. People must hate it. People must fight against the government because they want freedom. That's not the case. In the first 2 years, people were very supportive. They understand. It's very harsh. I know. But recent years, I like to get impatient. I get impatient. I have been able to live in China for 3.5 years because of harsh. But now, actually, don't forget, the central government has a policy, and the local government has a different policy. The central government has been criticizing the local government for implementing some of the policies which is not approved by the central government. But they are still doing a very harsh policy for the local level. Why? Because the central government has a quantity quota. If your city has more than 1,000 cases, you might have a problem as a mayor. Understand? So the mayor says, well, if you quantitative data of quota, then sorry, I have to implement very large policies. The central government, no, this policy is not my policy. You should not implement this policy. You make me angry. But then the local authority, I heard this, the local authority, well, if you have quantitative quota, then sorry, I have to do my job. So there is also a difference between central government. Very often, Western media use localized policies to represent central government. This is also wrong. Thank you for your question. This
Because nowadays we sometimes feel China as like the Chinese people don't like that they're not legitimate, the party is not legitimate. And we also have to remember, I don't know if this is the term in English, because I usually study Portuguese, but the normative pattern that used to be present among Chinese more imperial time.
Yes.
And it's something that's nowadays in the West, we don't have that. We don't view that as a normal thing, and we don't use them. But there's a pattern that is present in China to make our leaders take our leadership. And it's something that, because we have such a difference, sometimes we understand.
It's a good question. What about mental? Let me ask a question. China was recognized as a great power historically, right? China was so tell me, why China didn't have even one single colony? Portuguese was there, so I thought you can occupy Brazil. You can have so many colonies or even Macau in China. So yeah, but then when heaven is not then the difference between colony and the tributary states. Okay. Now we'll come back to this. Tributary state is under the mandate of heaven, which means I do not need to rule you. As long as you recognize my authority, recognize my culture, recognize my history, or respect me, that's fine. Malaysia Prime Minister 2 years ago, he was asked about China. He said, well, we were under the Chinese tributary system for 2,000 years. Chinese never come and conquer us. You Europeans, you can reach over 1 week and we will become our farm. So there's a different way of some Chinese scholars, they use 10 classes and to show maybe we should establish a modern 10 class system. I doubt it. Okay. But here, if we have a 10 class system, is that it's tradition that you recognize an authority, you do not challenge unnecessarily. This is a mandate pattern. It's Confucius understanding that if the emperor is doing a good job, taking care of his people, Confucius says the emperor is the boat. People are water. Water can hold the boat. Water can hold the boat. Okay, this is he tried to use this to describe the Kenka system. Okay, so the emperor is some of God, some of heaven. But the emperor, the people are under heaven. But it is not the emperor. It's the people's word. That's why China has dynasties over dynasties over dynasties. There are 3,000 years over dynasties. Is that if you lose the mandate of heaven, people will revolt you. So today, I do not see any problem with mandate of heaven today. I do not see any problem. I see there was one period after the revolution. That was a period that I did have the feeling that some kind of loss of mandate of heaven was taking place when I was a teenager. But now I haven't any feeling about that.
I don't have comments, but in fact, in the 19th century, there was a huge expansion of the Qing dynasty to the borderlands or the territory in the north, in the region of Xinjiang, the region of Mongolia, the region near the Russian border, and there was part of and of course, China today remains from that kind of situation.
Lost compared to Russia.
And it's very close to what you said. Yes, when you said that why India it's not a worry for the United States. Why Russia that take some parts of China, in Vladivostok, for instance, why China don't collaborate with Russia? It's the same problem.
I think that for the India, at least the political rule of game of India is similar. Multi-party elections, debates, this kind of rule of game, political tradition in India is similar to I would not in called China syndrome. The name was Elon Musk anxiety. Why the West has anxiety over China, including your questions? Okay. I think there are three theories that underlie this Western anxiety. First, modernized theory. According to modernized theory, Europe always shows when a country is becoming more and more modernized, a country becomes less religious, more civilized, more civil society, more interest groups, and gradually society becomes rural, becomes multi-party. Okay, this is one theory, modern theory. Second theory is the middle class theory. Middle class, which means that when an audience create more middle class will create its own structures, and they will each will create parties. And then we have multi-parties. We will have a multi-party political system. Third theory is authoritarianism is dead. Authoritarian dictatorship, they never produce good systems. They are not able to produce innovations. If we compare the three theories with Chinese developments, all the three theories do not hold. And this was very. When I discussed with my colleague Emma, they asked me very fast. All the three theories, modern theory, bilateral theory, authoritarian theory, all these three theories do not explain Chinese development. China somehow revoke all three theories and assumptions. And that's made was created us. And we cannot find any other explanations. And when we cannot find an explanation, then they get very bored and very anxious. My colleague said to me, if US is bad guy, China is bad guy, we would rather choose US as bad guy. Because we know United States. We do not know you. Even if you are a good guy, we do not want to choose you because we do not know you. This is a very big explanation. We do not know of an unknown power. For Europe, we want to know unknown power. Because you know. Okay, you know, even though Trump was a bad guy, or Biden was a bad guy, I don't know, but you would rather choose United because you know the United States. But you don't know China.
Sorry.
Yeah, please.
Just that I think one explanation I would go for is the market futures capitalism realism. That is, if you challenge the capitalism further, it's easier to imagine that the end of the world, like the world, China, United States, then the change of the global capitalism order. So I think that some of the media that we see here is about, cannot imagine the whole world changing the global economic order as China.
This is realism. This is very simplistic.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and I agree with you. I think here in the last years, years of China, but I cannot say that I agree that we do not know what China is, past history. It's more like what we see from our side that we may not agree, like in Xinjiang, the situation in Hong Kong, you know. This is not very good image of China and what people do for us, you know.
But the problem is that you know the truth of this.
This is just our
The TV shows this to you, and you have the choice. So this is it. You understand? You do not know the truth. I mean, you look at it in the Hong Kong. Yeah, for example, in the Hong Kong, they found out that the demonstrators, their utilities, whether it's masks, whether it's community, they are even more advanced than our kids. So people ask, what the hell is this? So where do they call it? So they found out all these civil societies and views from the West, they all, you know, this behind them. So that's why that the China has passed the national security law. But the all Western countries, they all have national security laws. But when China is making, oh, this is not good, you are breaking the rules, blah, blah, blah. Now, I'm asking you, did China change the system of Hong Kong? have democracy. I'm asking you, Trump was passed over to China in 1997. Do you know what was the system before? Before 1997, do you know? Yeah. No. Western countries should tell you what was the system before 1997. It was totally under the Queen's reign. It was one man, the Hong government. It is there was no democracy. Ask the last Hong government, president.
Hong Kong was never a democracy. It's not even on the table.
Okay. But then why that you are so keen on China should be a democratic system?
No one is saying that and portraying that on China's government. The way that US portrays what's happening on sites here in China, it's sometimes taken this word vision, and this might cause a sense of fear.
I know. But then ask the local president, if US and China, if was president, and ask the United Nations to vote. Okay. China and United States, which country has the most serious violation of human rights? Second, which country is actually the security problem of the whole world? Which country actually, if we go to the United Nations, could you imagine what will be the result?
US.
Yeah. So my question to you, you know the answer. You know China is not the people of the United States actually more, it will do more damage than China on the global system. But you still portray China. So this is that fair for the US, the British, so many guys they were killed by the British. And did EU sanction United States? Did EU sanction United States? Ask my colleague, why did you do that? You were eager to sanction China because of the Hong Kong, Taiwan, but why didn't sanction the United States? No, we can't. That is not fair. This is not fair.
I remember I've been in Aalborg in the worst moment.
Okay.
The worst moment of the stage. Because I've been shocked because policemen, I'm for democracy, the police of Hong Kong seems like me, like nurses, compared with
Exactly.
our police. Not only that, here
In the US.
in the US,
Yes.
and the manifestations, I try to talk to the manifestation. I had 200 people organized like ninjas. I saw it. I record. It was very interesting because there they can use the map of not Google map, the map, iPhone map, and they communicate with each other, and they saw everything about, they knew everything about the police. And the police only retreat and blocked but there was no one dead in 2 years. And we have to explain this phenomenon not by TV or newspapers, but I have the opportunity of being there.
I can give you two stories. Two students leaders, they were somehow exiled out. Okay. One was in the US, another was in the UK. And BBC article, BBC has a program called article, very challenging interviews. It's interviewing students demonstrating.
BBC?
Yeah, the BBC said that you have to understand that the way you are demonstrating, you are smashing, you are burning, that's actually, even in the UK, it's not allowed. You know that. And then she said, well, we have to do this. We have to use violence to remind the government, use violence to remind the government. can contribute accept this kind of explanation. I don't know. And another is that Xinjiang and Taiwan and Hong Kong, all these issues. These are core issues of China's language. There is no discussion. And the government does not want to even discuss with you on these issues. These are, according to China, is the red line of the red line. That's why whenever US Biden Xi Jinping they talk, China Xi Jinping said that Taiwan is the red line. This is the key fundamental pillar of US-China relations. If Taiwan issue is not resolved peacefully or in a good way, and our global relations, which means that our diplomatic relations will finish. That's why Biden repeats US China policy and US never do this, never do this, never do this. Before promises, every time, but after a few months, they will do the same thing. They will send the weapons, so it's always kind of around. It's always around. But it's very, very sad. Another story is that on Hong Kong, sorry, on Xinjiang report was written by a German guy. Now he's a university institute in the United States again. That German guy basically they tried to read this report on Xinjiang, right? And they found out all these resources came from one very sensitive one source. Because he didn't see, he didn't experience, but he told a lot of things. These people, this group people, they were punished, Then we found out all these sources came from pro-Uyghur exile community in Turkey.
Yeah.
That's, again, in academic studies, we are very keen on sources. Where comes the source from? This is very important. And then you come up with what bias, then you have different sources. You cannot only we discuss the talk about sources. She's afraid that if she will only do interviews on Chinese scholars, they can be biased. So it's very good. Actually, it's very good. If you only get the Chinese opinions, they can be biased. But now, the problem is if you only get sources from exile groups, then their positions you know already.
I think this is the kind of sources is one of the problems, because if you don't have the sources from the West, why do we trust in the sources from China? Sources from China, they are directly producing by government. So it's a problem.
Yes, I agree. That's true. You should be more facts. Methodologically speaking of doing good design, you have to argue this source, that source. So sources are very important. I just recently they say an American professor said, whom you are writing to, which audience you're writing your article to or literature to produce, and what are the sources, and what are the messages. You always have an audience. You are not writing to just the general. You are specific writing to a specific audience for support. Of course you do. When we write articles, we always have some message in your mind. We want to tell, or we want to get support from certain group of people. US has book, analysis has book, idea as consequence. Read as small book, idea as consequence. So you have an idea, you always, this idea will have consequence. This is Chinese model, or Chinese development model, is consequence. That's why you talk about two visions. He made a very good comparison of two visions. One is Chinese model, one is US liberal model.
If you don't mind, I will focus my question about the diplomatic relationship between Donald Trump, USA and Russia. During your speech, you said that the European Union is like planning to chess war between China and the USA, and we know that during the presidential term of Donald Trump, he kind of attacked against like North China and North Korea. So can you it's correct to us to say that Russia was also playing on those two chessboards between China, between USA.
But I think today Russia has no.
No, before the war.
Before the war.
During the Donald Trump's
Yes.
presidential term.
Yes. In the beginning, the United States actually had the idea, actually was from Kissinger. You know, Kissinger in the simplicity, the United States aligned with Kissinger was to play the China card. The game during the Cold War, the United States found China's good card to defeat the Soviet Union. But now it's turned differently, that with the United with Russia, the Russian card against China. Unfortunately, the US political elite was the Congress senators, they hate Russia. They could not accept this. Even though they dislike China, they could not align with Russia. And they were also afraid that if they do so, they will also accept European airlines if you are pro-Russian. And for Russia, you are right. Actually, in the early years, Russia had to reserve against the bilateral. And also, China's role in Arctic. I heard this. Russia is a member of Arctic Council, and China wants to apply for the observer status. In the beginning, Russia was the only power block China. China was, my God, we were supposed to be a good team, but now you actually, so you can see countries in a different period, they have different policies at that time. But today, the whole Central Asia, China said, go ahead, because the railway system is different. The Chinese, the width between the railway is different. Yeah. Russia is different. And today, say, let China decide. Today, Russia has no way. It has to support China's initiative. And for China, with the Ukraine war or without the Ukraine war, we are the first enemy of the Western world. Anyway, with or without, China will be, even today, the United States claim that Russia is storm, China is climate change. Understand? Yeah. Storm is gone, after 3 hours, storm gone. Okay. Climate change, that's very bad. And you have to use to this. So China is systemic challenger. And this is the West's biggest problem. Then China, if I were Chinese elite, okay, then I have to support Russia in order to weaken Western power. What should China do?
But in your idea, why China agreed saying that the relation between Russia and China was without limits? Because it's too strong. And in fact, the relation between China and Russia is not too strong, as you said.
But those things were said that I think before the war. Do you think so? Before the war?
Yeah. Yeah, before in the 20, yeah.
And the China-Russia joint declaration was signed 1 week before the war. So many Western analysts, including the former Australian Prime Minister Kevin, what's his called? Kevin, the previous Kevin Wood.
The previous, because now in Australia we have another.
He is the head of the Asian Society in the United States. What's his name? Kevin Root. Anyway, he also many Western leaders, they began to speculate that that Russia told Xi Jinping, and Xi Jinping gave a kind of acknowledgement. Then when Russia came back, they started the war. And that, I think, is wrong. I don't think that's correct. That's rumors. They say that they get Xi Jinping permission. I don't think so. I do not believe that. I do not believe that. Kevin Road.
Yeah, Kevin Road.
He said that I heard his analysis is that why that Russia started the war 1 week after came back from China, and after the joint declaration was signed. But joint declaration, you should read it. It's very interesting. It totally produced China and Russia's joint conceptualization of world order. What should be the world order? It's the two different visions. And NATO is regarded as a bloc-based security architecture. That's completely wrong.
Thank you for your presentation. I'd like to know your opinion about the future diplomatic and economic relationship between China and Brazil in the new government of Lula da Silva in Brazil.
Yeah. First, the Brazil has to stabilize its relations. The Chinese, I see the Chinese social media. There's a lot of debate about, because Bolsonaro is suing the results now, okay, saying that it's illegal, blah blah blah. So we don't know. I don't know that whether it's Lula will be the president for sure.
Yeah.
You are for sure. Yeah. So you don't know whether something will
Because
happen.
you have to annulate all the elections of deputies and so on.
Okay.
It's-
Yeah. Anyway, Lula is good from Chinese perspective. Okay, Lula is not pro-China, but Lula's political ideology is belonging to the left. Okay, so left is always, and Lula's even during the presidency election, he said both Putin and Zelensky are both responsible for the war. The West was surprised he said that. Both Putin and Zelensky, they are simultaneously responsible for the war. Lula said that. The West was very, oh my God. Anyway, that it shows that, but the BRICS is good for BRICS. But I think the China-Brazil economic relations will be further strengthened. It depends on the Brazil's foreign policy, how they regard. But because during this is the democratic system. One president comes, then the discourse, then the narratives become all different. I remember in 2019, during the campaign, 1819, I was in Brazil. Bolsonaro was just on the way to be the president. A lot of demonizations of China, saying China is buying whole Brazil. And some professors showed me the newspapers that China is going to buy the electric system in Rio de Janeiro. And then some people, Bolsonaro or his aides said that China is going to buy whole Brazil. A lot of this kind of demonization rhetorics. But I think that economic relations, definitely, China has been the largest economic partner of Brazil for many, many years. I think they will be continuing like this. The only debate is that some professors in Brazil claim that China is making Brazil peripherized. You can explain the concept peripherization. Because Brazil were semi-peripheral countries, quite developing countries. But Brazil today become a provider of commodities to China's industrialization, of China's manufacturing. So China is making Brazil and other countries peripherized, push them into the periphery countries status. And this is one. Another is the unequal exchange. That China is always exporting finished products, whereas other countries exporting raw material. This is dependent school. Dependent school is from the Latin American region. Dependent school is about the unequal exchange, which is the source of underdevelopment. So China is creating underdevelopment. No, this is the debate. So all these issues will appear once in a while. They will never end. But I think that the economic relations between China and Latin America, generally speaking, and between Brazil and China will be further improved or enlarged when Lula becomes president. I think so. Bolsonaro is a little bit unstable, but he visited Putin during the war. It was regarded very courageous action. But I think that so Chinese strategy is that if you go to East Asia, go to my backyard, I go to your backyard. China said to the United States indirectly, you make a lot of troubles in my South China Sea. Okay, I go to your backyard.
Go to Cuba.
Yeah, but Cuba president is going to visit China and Russia.
China, Russia.
Yeah. So and
And
Central Asia,
Central
Central America is switching recognitions from Taiwan to China a lot.
Panama,
Panama, Nicaragua.
Dominicana, República
Yeah.
Dominicana, El Salvador.
Yeah. So
More questions?
yes, please.
In relation to the African countries, for example, China has a policy of export infrastructure and capital goods. For example, some infrastructures were made in Kenya and other parts of Africa. In Latin America, I'm from Brazil, I saw some criticisms about this, claiming that, oh, this is wrongly, of course, China's imperialism, new China's imperialism. But you showed us that if you analyze the debt of African countries, you easily see that the main part of the African countries' debt not belongs to China. Okay. So if these countries, Latin American countries, and less developed countries, they could defend themselves from ideology perpetration and this kind of identitarian wars, and they just stop and say, okay, I'm not having any kind of automatic alignment with US or China. I will do only what's good for me. I think it's kind of inevitable that the relationship between Latin American and African countries with China grow up. But here in Europe, they have a different dependence on the US because of security issues. For example, Germany, we cannot see strong army, so there are lots of NATO and American bases in Germany, for example. How do you see European Union, what European Union should do to surpass this security dependence to the US in order to improve European Union and China relations?
First, on infrastructure into Africa, Chinese development model has a motto. China has a kind of explanation why China is developing so fast. China says infrastructure. Chinese will have a saying: to be rich is to build the road. If you want to be rich, build the road. Okay, so China spent huge amount of money on infrastructure. China today is called infrastructure crazy, which means that the worst infrastructure project give to China. They will fix for you. Okay? No problem. They will fix everything. So that's the Chinese approach to development infrastructure. So the Chinese Asian Infrastructure Development Bank has one principle, that is, the money from that bank has to be used on infrastructure. I do not use the money on democracy, human rights improvement. That's the Western approach. Western always use a lot of money in improving governance, improving that's the Western belief that in order development, in order to get country developed, you need to have a efficient government. You have to have a less corrupt government. You have to train good governance, good democracy, good human rights. But China said no. I don't want to involve all these issues. I want to have a good infrastructure, because if you have a good airport, corrupt officials, they use airport. The common people also use airport. The road, corrupt officials, they use the road. The common people also use the road. Okay, so in that sense, that's Chinese way. But on the European strategy, recently I involved a lot of research activities because of this on European security issues. I have been invited to be part of European conferences, research activity all the time. My colleagues, they organize a lot of this. I think the key problem for European state independence lies on the two parts. One is that Eastern Europe, because I discussed with many Eastern European scholars and including ambassadors. They were invited to teach in our university, give guest lectures. They say that they are not supporting any European strategic independent initiative that upset Washington. No. Eastern Europe is very pro-Washington. I must admit that that's my observation. Okay, they would rather have a strong relation with Washington to get security insurance rather than France, Germany. This first. Second, that is the NATO, because the European Union member, they are all members of NATO. If you develop strategic independence, then how about NATO? Do you need the Euro system? Or you quit NATO and develop European strategic independence or what? I don't know. I'm asking you, now you have a dual system. Do you need dual system? Because all European Union countries, they are also member of NATO. So this is also, the third is weaponry system. Is that if you use your own strategic independence, whose weaponry system, the French one, a German one, or American one? Of course, you don't want to use American one. If you want strategic independence, definitely you want to use your own weaponry system, the army system. Okay, so I think there are a lot of discussions now, and Denmark does not support. Denmark is one of the strongest allies of the United States. In the ECPR meeting in Aalborg this summer, I was there, and one of the Danish professors from Roskilde University, he told us information that Denmark did not spend 2% of military budget, defense budget. In exchange, Denmark would support the United States without any doubt. That's exchange.
No limits.
Yeah. You know, see, if country like Denmark is thinking that way, and my colleague told me Danish elite, they do not support European independence. I think currently they think that there is no way they can avoid Washington. No way. So it's very difficult for Europe to get consensus on that issue. I do not have a big confidence. Maybe French, German, they have a more confidence. I don't know. But according to my research activities on research network, I do not see strong willingness in develop European strategic independence. That's also Russia's point. That's also Chinese point. Is that worthy for China to discuss big issues like global security order? You do not even have a security independence about arms reduction, about nuclear policies. China cannot discuss with the European Union. You do not have that autonomy. Even Russia does not talk with the European Union about arms control. No, European Union is not partner because you do not have that kind of independence. Yes.
So you were talking about the infrastructures, and that remind me about and the sustainability, and that remind me about the new plan for sustainable urbanization in China. And I'm studying that, starting to study that, So, and I would like to know a little bit about not the infrastructures for roads and airports, but about housing. Sustainable housing in China. And I think that nowadays they're starting to evolve in that way of living, I think, and more Western, like the United States, don't want to move in that way.
Housing.
Yeah,
Okay.
sustainable housing. And in Portugal, we also have programs that are not working nowadays, but
I know.
they're supposed to.
So you have two questions. One is about the economic development, another sustainable, another is housing. I think that from Xi Jinping's presidency until now, China is moving from quantitative development to qualitative development. So today, high economic growth. Don't tell me you want to have high economic growth, but you tell me we need to have a high quality economic growth. Okay. So about creating a consumer market, dual economy, dual circulation economy, all these are new strategies focusing on quality. Okay, so today quality is important, but on the housing has been a problem since from the beginning, because the Chinese development, one of the key economic growth engine is housing and the building the property market, and many of local government, their budget has been based on selling land to the private properties, to the property companies. You know, so the market is connected with the local economy. It's really a big problem. I don't know how they can do it, because if the property market collapses, many of the local government economy will also collapse. So on the property issues, it's a big issue. Nobody dare to touch it. Until so far, I haven't got any clear policy clue about how China is going to reform. The house is so expensive, right? Huge expensive. So nobody understands how this property market is going to be resolved. I don't know. It's a big issue. Because the problem should be derived back to the original source of the problem, which is start from the economic reform, where housing property became the engine of economic growth. Because housing needs all kind of material. Housing property development, you need the cement. That's why I say cement. Okay, cement. You know, China manually built more than 500 cities. More than 500 cities. So how much cement they use? Okay. Then all kind of materials, labor forces, technologies, all used in property market. The property market is engine of economic growth, but now become a very painful problem because that it connected with the local economy. I don't know how to resolve it. I hope one day they will develop some policy.
How is the situation of Belt and Road Initiative at this moment?
Let me tell you that the Belt and Road has two different pictures. In Europe, they depict very negative picture about Belt and Road. Denmark too. Oh, Belt and Road. I published a book on this one. One chapter is specific about Belt and Road. Okay, that Europe is very negative about Belt and Road. But don't forget, Belt and Road is expanding in Africa, in Latin America, especially in Southeast Asia. I show you all these connectivities, railways, and now G20 meeting in Jakarta. The Indonesia President and Xi Jinping, they pushed the button, start the bullet train, the speed train connection between Bandung and Jakarta. And between Laos and China is finished. Now they are going to make new one from China all the way to Singapore. All the way to Singapore through Vietnam, Thailand, and Singapore. So they are increasingly connected. But Belt and Road is regarded as a key challenge. The Chinese, if there is a Chinese order, which I pose the question whether there will be multi-order world where China represents one order. This is just an open question. We have to do the research. But the engine of Chinese order is Belt and Road. It's the Belt and Road. So Europe is portraying Belt and Road as a systemic rival, part of systemic rival. That's Belt and Road. Because in Belt and Road, it's Chinese investment, Chinese rules, Chinese norms. Especially one chapter from Polish guy, he's a very good guy. He said that China's Belt and Road or Chinese policymakers are generating norm diffusion or symbolic power diffusion effect on many of Eastern European policymakers. China do not need to say you have to follow my way of doing. This is exactly what you said, that there are two visions of different way of But Europe, we are very much constructive approach. My students love constructive theories, okay? Constructive, norm diffusions, identity, history. But this represents Chinese identity. Chinese way of doing things. This is not European. So that's why that I think that. But on the other hand, during the war, the trade between Europe and China is flourishing. I read somewhere that the volume of train exchange between China and Europe increased tremendously because the airspace was blocked. You sent to Russia, Russia sent us. Okay, so the airplane, as many of our Chinese students, they could not return to China because during the war period. Because
But now it's passing through.
I don't know how many.
Belarus or not.
Yeah, but still a long way. I got the researcher from Taiwan to visit me, and he had to travel to Bangkok, from Bangkok to another place, a big round, then come to Europe. It's a very inconvenient. But then the trading route, we have to use bad road. That is the Trans-Siberia Railway between Europe and China. I show you this. There are two major routes, but they are going to build more routes. One is fixed from Xi'an to London. Another is from EU to Madrid. EU, that's the China's small commodity center. If you go to EU, the shopping around, you can spend 3 days there shopping around. You can buy the world, everything. It's a global small commodity exchange center in EU. That's in Zhejiang province. Yes.
I'm going to make my question now. Thank you for the lecture and also for the excellent debate. I wanted to know, because I couldn't help to notice that you put BRICS under China in your multi-order graphic. So I was interested to know your opinion if the BRICS, if there is a greater institutionalization of BRICS, it could help to strengthen the democratization of the international system as it is now, Western-led based, or if it could strengthen your idea of multi-order world, or both. I mean, could BRICS, a BRICS institutionalization, or even an expansion of BRICS now, for example, with the interest of Argentina and so far and so on, could it help to strengthen the current system or strengthen the multi-order?
Your comment should be here that if the United States recognizes or allow integration of new powers, then will be reordering. But the point is that US and China are decoupling. At least the US is trying, and China is preparing. And China is also preparing to decouple from the United States too. And now, because of the war, Russia and Europe, you are decoupling. Okay? And in Denmark, we are talking about a new alternative energy system. I think Germany, France, they all talk new alternative system, which means they will isolate any conflict created by Russia in terms of energy shortage. Okay, so our multi-order world is built on such premises, is that in case the West cannot accept the rise of China and begin to witness decoupling between US and China, and also now is between Russia and Europe, then we are moving towards here. Then I think that at least the BRICS here, at least that China has these pillars which can support. I do not believe the BRICS will support the US liberal and give up China, and at least not BRICS anymore. Okay, that's why China is paying great attention on BRICS. My friend Professor Li Xing from Aalborg University in Xiamen, they are setting up a new center of BRICS. And Xi Jinping visited Xiamen several years ago.
You work there.
And we work there, and we focus on BRICS. China is very investing on BRICS. And that's why that India, even though India worried about China, had the border conflict with China, but nevertheless, that India is aware of the fact that its future also lies in getting along with China. India foreign minister said many times, Asian century. If we talk about Asian century, it can only be realized with the cooperation between India and China. If India and China are not friendly with each other, forget Asian century. So India knows clearly the limits that it can do in Quad, the Quadro, the US, Japan, Australia, India, these four countries make a security dialogue. India is against any text or discourse which are directed at China. No. Either you put it indirectly, it's okay. But if we can read clearly discourse or some kind of sentences which is very aimed at China, no, India will not do it. Don't forget, even during the border conflict, China was still India's largest economic partner, largest even today. Okay, so BRICS would be at least China is confident with Chinese further investment on BRICS. Okay, so if there is a situation where the world is moving towards model because of the decoupling, then at least China has some of the institutional pillar that China can have a trust in, or at least have confidence in.
Yeah, and I have a second last question, because like we mentioned during lunch and also during your presentation, we have been seeing a lot of double standards in the Western system. And one example, clear example for me, for example, is in Twitter. We have in every media, Chinese media, we have that Chinese state controlled media, but we don't see that, for example, in BBC, which is a British controlled media. Of course, we can discuss the different roles they play and how they're linked to the government or not, but for me, it's a clear difference. And at the same time, both Hu Jintao and Xi Jinping, they constantly mention the need for China to better explain its ideas, values, and tell a good Chinese history also to the world, which may be linked to maybe promoting cultural soft power initiatives. So my question basically is, how can China surpass this kind of Western lens towards China? Because the 20th National Congress, Xi Jinping mentioned a lot of things, but Western media focused on the security matters. Xi Jinping mentioned about Taiwan, US, nothing else basically was discussed from his report. So how can China surpass this kind of misperceptions? And
it's very difficult because the Western media is controlled by Anglo-Saxons, by Anglo-Saxon country, by the English media. I don't know Portuguese language media. Okay, maybe it's also like this. But unfortunately, all English media somehow they have this perception. This perception was cultivated through. Every time we talk about China, Xinjiang, Taiwan, Hong Kong, every time about Xinjiang, Taiwan, Hong Kong, as if it become a coined image. Okay, so it's very difficult. For example, you mentioned Xi Jinping talked long about everything, but they only focus on Taiwan. Xi Jinping only gave some principles about Chinese policy on Taiwan. Finished, okay? But the Western media only talk about it. But Xi Jinping talked many other issues. They never. For example, the Hu Jintao was carried away, but then all kind of, oh my God, the speculations about Hu Jintao was kidnapped away and so on. But the Singapore media, they gave the whole picture, a whole film about Hu Jintao, how he entered, how he was in a dialogue. He might feel very uncomfortable, and he gradually, carried away. Nothing like the Western media's depiction of Hu Jintao had the quarrel with Xi Jinping, that he was carried away. He was pushed away or carried away, whatever. This is totally, but it's very difficult for China, and because the media is controlled by Anglo-Saxons countries, and the Chinese media is more. So today, actually, there is such a situation is that the Chinese, majority of Chinese, they do not understand English, so they read Chinese news, so they have a Chinese perception. And the Western, they have the Western media, Anglo-Saxon media, they have this big gap. For example, on the Ukraine war, the Chinese understanding on the war is totally different from the way that our understanding of war here in Europe. It's totally different. And there is one feeling, this I must tell you now, prepare, is that in the last couple of years, there is a sentiment in China, developing in China, that is that whatever we do, whatever we say, the West demonized us anyway. So forget them. We develop our own way. We follow our own way. We follow our own policy. We follow our own what is called direction. Forget them. Before we always talk about integration with the West, wings about the West, but now there is a sad sentiment, and also because of coronavirus. Oh, Chinese made the virus. Wuhan laboratory produced the virus. All kind of this. The Chinese audience, Chinese people get very angry. I can see a lot of angry messages from Chinese social media. So now there is a feeling: forget foreigners, or forget the Westerners. We go our own direction. Now there is also awareness we need to set up not only industrial, commercial standard, our own academic standard too. Previously, to publish our Western journals, top journals, is glorious things. Today, fine. We set up our own systems. We publish our own journals. We develop our own systems. It's like this. My student, he worked in the Chinese Academy of Social Science. Actually, there is no such demand. Many years ago, there is demand that in order to get promotion, you have to publish something by the Western journals or academics. Today, there is no such demand. Our own journal is good enough, as good as so. You can see this is the effect of decoupling. It's a decoupling also. The China is also decoupling. It's not only United. We are also decoupling. If the situation like this continues, then the premise is that now we are moving towards a multi-order world. So,
which I think that would transform the world in a very, very complicated.
Very complicated world. Yeah.
Probably not complicated, more difficult.
So in our project, we have some measurement, empirical measurement. One is in the governance, in the defense, in the public, because in the future, our project says that in the future, the governance is between different orders. Okay. Because today we have global governance, because we have a one order, we then we have global governance. If there are multi-order, then what is governance? Then the governance will be between orders, negotiate between orders. I haven't had time to introduce, I don't think it's relevant to here, so I didn't prepare. Otherwise, I have a lot of PPTs on our project, how are we going to, and what is our methodological approach, okay? Mapping, conception mapping, narrative constructing, and process tracing, and so on. So a lot of methodological approaches.
Yeah, even from a technological point.
Yeah. I think there are some criteria. You need some criteria in order to measure, and I think that's one is defense, another is environment, and because the United States could withdraw from Paris Agreement when it suits the United Nations.
The US had the idea of the clean networks, which is basically saying to us we should choose between Chinese technology and Western technology.
Yeah. So I think the demonization of China and the Belt and Road create a lot of decoupling feeling, not only from Western side, also from the Chinese side. They get tired as well, because whatever we do, whatever we say, we will be demonized anyway. Is this whenever we say Xinjiang, Hong Kong, and pop up all the time? This is the image of China. This is not the image of China. This is the part of the image of China. You can create as China. You have the right to criticize, but this does not represent China. That's what I'm saying. It does not represent China. And every time when an event was over, a lot of rethinking. People in Hong Kong began to rethink about all the events. And recently, I saw an old generation. He shouted at the young generation. He said, "Well, that the whole demonstration is about the young generation. How about us? It was us who created Hong Kong's prosperity. It was not the young generation. Why the younger generation discourse become the main discourse? Why they are fighting a cause become the key cause of Hong Kong? How about us? How about the old generation? It is us who built Hong Kong. It's not the younger generation. The old generation get very upset." But the whole discourse was based on the young generation discourse. You have to admit that's what's true. The demonstrators were the young generation.
because it was their future that was at risk.
Yeah, but then the whole generation, oh my God, if that is discourse, then the whole generation they got very upset. It is us who create Hong Kong's prosperity. So again, Western media occupied, the whole world's attention. It's difficult. Anglo-Saxons.
Yeah, there's also the discussion because what happens even in Chinese media, of course, young people have more voice because they use more the media than older people, for example. So at least a professor of mine at Fudan mentioned this. It's difficult to measure the public sentiment only by social media.
For example, Kishore Mahbubani, do you know him from Singapore? Kishore Mahbubani. He gave a very good example. He said before Corona, for many years, Chinese tourists were about 100 million every year. 100 million. That's twice of European population. And they all return. No single person wants to stay in the West. If you think China is a depressive system, China is under the communist heart, then many people, when they get a chance to come to the West, then they just stay. No, simply stay. On the contrary, many of my networks, my friends, we met in China, they said they recently visited the United States. You know what they told me? Li, I was surprised when I went to the United States. The big cities cannot even compare with our third or fourth ranking cities. They were talking about US infrastructure, so poor. It's shaking, the country is totally shaking. So the Chinese confidence become, that's why I'm saying the part of Chinese confidence comes from Chinese development, the increase in living standard. You could say the Chinese Communist Party exchange legitimacy with providing people's high living standard. You could say that many people claim is fine. If that's claim, they want. I buy that. Is that that's Deng Xiaoping's social contract? So Deng Xiaoping said to the party, if we do not get developed fast, if we do not give people a high living standard, people betray us, people will give up us. So Deng Xiaoping said, forget ideology, develop. But now in Europe, I found out that ideology was a big issue in Europe. When China becomes de-ideologized, in Europe it becomes so ideological. Everything becomes ideological. Everything. I was very surprised. Yes?
In 2019, a former Liberian minister went to a US university to give a lecture on China-Africa relations. And he was telling about the interconnectivity and the infrastructure of railroads in China, in Africa, the infrastructure built by China. And he was explaining the difference between the relations of China with Africa and the West with Africa. And he was saying that before the China-Liberia, for example, he was minister for Liberia, experience, the relations of the West with African countries was the same as in the colonial times. So they only built the infrastructure to take out the mineral resources, for example, from the country and to bring it to the West. While China is connecting African countries, African cities, creating an environment for circulating goods and economy inside Africa. So he was explaining this as the big difference between China and US relations to Africa. So I personally believe that practices is the criterion of the truth. So when the West portrays China and portrays China as a threat, don't you think that the West is not projecting itself and its practice on China, not portraying the reality of the history of Chinese relations with other countries?
But if the US has this kind of projection, it's because the Chinese way of doing infrastructure, the Chinese way of investment, are not in line with the Western norms, values, or norms at least practice. That's why Blinken claimed that China does not follow the rule-based order. International aid system is the same. The Chinese way of aiding Africa is not based on donor-recipient relationship. Because donor relationship is that I'm the donor, I give the money to you, I'll provide the investment, you have to listen to me. Okay? You are the recipient. The Chinese way is called business approach. Business approach is that you are my customer. You are not my, China is my customer. China is not a donor. Customer means that I can demand. Okay, you are my customer. You are invested in my place, so I can demand you. But if donor recipient, you have no demand. You only follow the rule. Okay, so I think that is many other Chinese way of doing things. So business means that I need earn a profit. It's very clear. I'm not giving you free. Okay, I need a profit, but it's business in a way that I will help you to make profit. Because when China invests, China wants to get profit. If that project does not work, you will never earn profit. Okay, so you have to make that project work though. But donor or recipient is that you invest, you donate something. If something is not working, well, that's your problem because you are corrupted, because you cannot do anything. Oh, they have all kind of critical attitude towards Africa, towards developing countries. I'm not saying that Chinese way is perfect. China also made a lot of mistakes. China can also make a lot of mistakes too. But the point is that the relationship is different. The cooperation mode of conduct is also different.
But I think that when you talk about the client or customer, in fact, you are subjected to my own interests. So I have a strong political capacity to influence the other part because I have the money. If you don't agree with my opinion, informally, I take off the money and you stay. And China not only take some infrastructures for its own interests because some of the countries which participate in the infrastructures, in fact, they didn't have the money to continue the projects. But in the other parts, China influenced that countries to agree with them internationally in international organizations and in some political debates and so on. That countries agree with Chinese positions. It's a kind of partnership.
Yeah. Because if you have client relationship, business relationships, you are not supposed to interfere in the country where you invest. It's not good for you to interfere.
Okay.
That's why you cannot interfere. And
it's not only China; the other countries do the same, of course. But
most Asian countries are like this. They do not want to interfere in other countries. You say the European Union's model and ASEAN model is a good model. I teach Chinese university some courses on comparing the two models of regional integration. Europe is purely based on norms values. You have to have same norm. Okay, all countries become member of the European Union has to adopt the same system, the same criteria. Okay, democracy, multi-party system, good human rights, good governance. This is the criteria. Okay? But the ASEAN, there no.
But for instance, Greece, after China participating in Piraeus support and investment, changed its policy in related to China because supported China policy in Europe.
Yes.
After that,
Also Hungary.
One of the examples.
Yeah, it's a good example. It's called normative fusion. That's why the Europe they believe in normative fusion. Even though China says, I'm not going to interfere in your domestic affairs, I'm not going to do this, that, but Europe says, well, because Europe is very much constructively minded, okay? Because they believe that norm has to, even China does not want to export its norms values, but its development project will create the spillover effect anyway.
Okay, so I think that we had a very, very interesting presentation and debates. I think that we can. Are there more questions? Okay, so thank you very much for your presentation. Thank you very much to the audience for the very rich debates which was developed here. And in the beginning, I forgot to say thank you to Javier and Emmanuel, who were in fact the main responsibles for putting this together, and of course to George for his discussant role. And finally, let me thank you very much for this opportunity to listen. Something that I think it's somehow new to our knowledge here in the field of Chinese studies. So I'm very happy for having you here, and I'm sure that everybody took benefit from this lecture. And so thank you very much.
Thank you.
I hope we can continue to cooperate.
Yes, definitely.
Trying to be de-Westernized in scientific terms and also de-Easternized in scientific terms. Yeah, I think that's it's a major challenge. I think.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.